In 3 weeks, I looked at over 50 trucks. I test drove 15 of them, and then I pulled the trigger on one. I negotiated $4,000 off the price, and I'm going to tell you how I did it. Hey folks, I'm Daniel. I just bought a truck, and I'm going to do 2 videos on the experience. This video will focus on the mechanics of buying a vehicle. I'll include my observations of what dealers are currently doing in most markets and how to navigate the process. I'm going to try to answer questions like, how do you do your due diligence? How do you research? How do you try to prevent yourself from potentially getting stuck with an expensive repair or a lemon after you buy it? How do you handle the negotiations? And so much more coming up. So about a month ago, my 24-year-old truck, a 99 F-150 with 204,000 miles on it, just gave out on me with problem after problem. So what does a guy like me do in a situation like this? I prefer to pay cash for vehicles, but because I'm such a tightwad, it's hard for me to see all that money walk out the door all at once. I could keep repairing it, but I got sick of the maintenance and unreliability. I'd had the truck for 9 years and it had been mostly a weekend warrior for me for things like a trip to the home improvement store or the random run to the dump. It had just cracked the 204,000 mile mark, and once a truck gets 24 years old and has that many miles on it, the maintenance and repairs basically turn into a car payment. I did some of the repairs myself, but for the more complicated and demanding repairs, I paid someone else to do it. So like any red-blooded American male, when you get sick of dealing with a problem, and I mean any problem, you buy a truck. And thankfully, because of years of preparation, I paid cash for it. And I don't say that as a flex. My goal with everything with this channel is to practice what I preach. So here's what I learned and how I did it. Everything I'm going to reference is for used trucks. I don't prefer to buy new vehicles in general. I've done it before, back when car prices were more reasonable and I was buying more affordable cars. But with prices the way they are now, and no sign of them coming back down, a decent used car or truck is now close to what a new vehicle used to be. Also, full disclosure, I have a background in the automotive repair industry, so the past decade of my life has been cars. So the first thing I experienced firsthand is that dealers are entitled right now. The truck market is heavily inflated beyond where it was just a few years ago, pre-COVID. The manufacturers are open about reducing all outstanding inventory to help those COVID prices stick. That means that instead of keeping 120 days of inventory on the lot, they're looking to keep roughly 35 days of inventory on their lot. As a result, the supply of new vehicles is low and demand is very high. Because of this low supply and high demand, many buyers who would normally buy a new vehicle cannot, so they are forced to buy a used vehicle. This upward pressure on prices has been unrelenting. A truck that used to be $30,000 is now nearly $50,000. This gives the dealers a sense of entitlement. Quite a few dealers refuse to work on resolving obvious issues because someone less discriminating than me would snatch it up and ask no questions. I'm talking about some absolute junk out there. That dealership sense of entitlement brings us to the second lesson, which is to use your senses. Listen very carefully to the sound of the engine. Let it run while you walk around the exterior so you can listen for rattles. On your test drive, make sure you drive various kinds of roads and get it up to highway speeds. You might hear a roaring, which can indicate that the bearings are worn out or even damaged. Feel for things like excess vibration or pulling on the steering. Smell the carpet and the seats. A slight smell of mildew might not detail out and will be a dead giveaway that there's been prior water intrusion issues. Keep your eyes active and bring a flashlight or pay someone to inspect on your behalf. The interior of a car, the engine bay, and the underside are all naturally dark places. Even with good natural light, a bright flashlight will reveal things that natural light will not. With dealers not really worried about finding buyers, they don't always do a great job cleaning and detailing the interior. Simply crawling underneath a vehicle and spotting rust on a fairly new vehicle can tell you if it's from the Rust Belt or the Northeast. Then there are clues about the interior. I'll give you an example. Ram trucks are known to have a paper-thin gasket on the high mount brake light. That's the third brake light at the back of the roof. The gasket wears out quickly and it starts letting water in, which will pool in the floor, stain the headliner, and it can cause all sorts of mold and mildew issues if they're not addressed quickly. Long term, it can also damage your electrical system. Most of the electrical modules and the main cabin wiring harness run in the body channels below the carpet on either side of the vehicle. Excess moisture can destroy the wiring harness connectors with corrosion. So to make sure I can catch this stuff, I bring a flashlight with me anytime I'm looking to buy a vehicle. One truck I was looking at was really well cared for, and the interior was really good until I hit it with the flashlight. I could automatically see a water line in the headliner. I pointed out an obvious water intrusion issue to the dealer, and I asked them to detail the headliner and replace the gasket and install some additional silicone. They told me to pound sand, and that if I didn't buy it, somebody else would. So I walked. The truck was really well maintained, but a dealer that isn't bothered by a known issue and refuses to resolve an issue is probably overlooking other issues as well. I don't want to give them my money. And that's the third lesson, is be prepared to walk away. That can either be for good when you know you're never coming back, or temporarily leave so you can double back if needed. I ran into many situations where the trucks were listed for sale right after they were traded in. I'd show up to look at it a day or two after it was listed, and it would be in the shop being worked on with cigarette ash on the seats and fast food wrappers on the floor. Depending on how picky you are, those things don't necessarily have to be a deal breaker. But in my experience, pride of ownership of a vehicle usually results in more meaningful things like doing the routine maintenance and generally taking care of the vehicle. Seeing the vehicle in its most raw form can give you valuable insight. Dealers are listing vehicles extremely fast right now, so if you show up to take a look at a truck, don't be surprised if it's not even ready to be shown or even test driven. I would still recommend pushing to see it just to get that info. Another reason to be prepared to walk away is that in my state, we have a state inspection that has to be completed every year. Half of the trucks I went to look at hadn't even had a state inspection yet. A couple dealers even put together paperwork for me with the price and everything, but they later had to tell me that the truck didn't pass the state inspection and that they were waiting on parts. One truck even had an exhaust manifold leaking, and it was on a national back order with no release date. But even if that's the case, get the Carfax or the Autocheck. See if they can give you a build sheet or the window sticker so you can see all of the options and packages that it has. Take a look at it in person. They may not want to show it to you yet because it hasn't been reconditioned. Tell them you're not bothered by it being a bit dirty, that you care about the important stuff and want to get a feel for the vehicle. The fourth thing is to remember that the use and history of a truck is way more important than whether it's a certain brand. Do not get sucked into brand loyalty nonsense. This is just marketing. I know it's nice to join a team and wear the jersey, but Chevy, Ford, Ram, and Toyotas all have their strengths and weaknesses. Different years do much better or much worse depending on the make, and some trucks are better for specific purposes. I won't get into them because that's not the purpose of this video. In general, Toyotas are some of the best trucks, but in my budget, where I was trying to stay below 35 grand, the Toyotas I drove were less than impressive. Maybe Toyota owners are hard on their trucks, or there aren't a lot out there because they love them too much to get rid of them. But I only saw one Tundra that I was even remotely close to considering, and as soon as I test drove it, it was an automatic no. Chevy owners mock Ford owners, but Chevy can't seem to figure out how to apply the right amount of corrosion protection to the undercarriage to keep the body and frame from rusting. Ford loves to hate on Chevy, but maybe Ford should learn how to manufacture a decent transmission. GMC loves to take your money, but if they spent more time figuring out how to keep their engines from guzzling oil, I'd appreciate that. And if Ram can figure out how to do basic things like keeping water on the outside of the vehicle, that would be a good place to start. No vehicle is perfect. Many vehicles perform great if you just show them a little love. If you're looking at a truck with 4 prior owners, 100,000 miles, quite a few dings and dents and scratches all over the interior and exterior, these things show heavy use and no pride of ownership. One prior owner, an immaculate interior, almost no dings or scratches, great sounding engine, clear scans, and 4 pages of service records, all done on time. That's probably the one you want to take a look at. The fifth thing to do is to do your research. Get your grubby paws on a Carfax or an Autocheck so you can see things like maintenance or accident history. But don't just stop there. Here's what I do when I look at a vehicle. Head over to carcomplaints.com to get a baseline of vehicles. So for example, if I click on Ram and then 1500, you can see that some years are just better than others. If you're looking at a 2014 and you're about ready to pull the trigger, you might want to click on that year and scroll through to figure out the trends. For some perspective, they sold over 400,000 Ram trucks that year. So a few hundred reporting a certain issue does not mean you will see that issue, but I guarantee you that someone wishes they'd known about these issues. A few years back, I was in the market for a mid-size SUV that had a 3rd row. I was looking at one particular Honda Pilot and I took it for a test drive. I noticed on the highway that there was a vibration. The salesman told me it was the tires and maybe they just needed to be rotated or rebalanced. But but I didn't think so. I went to carcomplaints.com, and sure enough, for that year, there were some customers who reported that the variable cylinder management was a problem. The VCM is what kicks in to convert the 6-cylinder down to 3 or 4 cylinders. It's basically an eco mode that kicks in to save gas. It's a nice gas mileage feature, but it was causing excess engine vibration. You can swap some sensors to turn it off and get rid of the feature, but instead I went 1 year up in my search. I found that very few people reported issues and pulled the trigger. Thankfully, it hasn't been a problem. The lesson here is a quick internet search can help you stay informed and out ahead of many problems. The sixth thing to do is to scan it or pay someone to scan it and help you interpret the results. The next thing is you need to get one of these if you're buying a used vehicle. It's called the Blue Driver Scan Tool. If you remember earlier, I was talking about how I was taking a look at a Tundra. I plugged this Blue Driver in and went to the history. It didn't have a check engine light on, but there were a ton of both current and historical codes relating to the engine, transmission, ABS, and power steering. And it revealed that the check engine light had been on up until 30 miles ago. I knew that this dealership had 2 locations, and I pulled up their other location on Google Maps to check the distance. It was almost exactly 30 miles. They had cleared the check engine light and driven it over to this new location. I wasn't interested in the vehicle for a bunch of other problems that I later found, but this thing is awesome. I'm not getting paid to say this. It saves all the VIN of the vehicles you've scanned, and you can email yourself the reports. They have great customer service. It wouldn't connect to one vehicle, and the customer service is through a live chat. They showed me a trick to connect to the vehicle in real time, and it resolved the issue. If you're interested in the money side of things, I'm going to be doing a second video that highlights how I paid for the truck in cash. I'll share with you what I invested in to help cover the cost and how to research car prices in this crazy market and how to buy a vehicle in cash. I'll also walk you through what to avoid and how to negotiate, what things the dealership will budge on and what they won't. Also, did you know that some dealerships actually take a personal check up to a certain dollar amount? Yep, people still write personal checks for cars. Go check it out. Until next time.